Hello guys, good morning. Please confirm that you can hear me.
Yes, good morning.
All right, great. Good morning. Okay, so today we'll be talking about authentication using cookies. All right, the last time we spoke about JWT. So today we'll be learning about cookie-based authentication. And if we have time, we're going to try to see how this thing works with the front end. All right. Basically, we'll be testing with Postman, but if we have time, we'll try to see how it works with the front-end application. Okay, so let me share my screen. Just hold on a few seconds. Let me share my screen. Mm, so let me share this. I'm gonna see my browser. Share. Okay. All right. I'm just gonna share my entire screen because finding it hard to get just the screens I want to share. Okay, so I guess you can see my screen now. Uh, confirm that we are recording. Yeah, so let's hit the road. All right, so we're going to create a project and I'll call it, let's see, let's have it on the desktop. All right, and just call it cookie. Paste. Oh, all right, so we'll do the usual bootstrapping, npm init y. Mhm. So we need the following packages: npm I express, of course. We're going to get calls in case you have time to check out the front end, how the front end works. Um, but again, we're going to get cookie parser. It just be all. Okay, so I think this should do. So we'll get bcrypt. Bcrypt. Okay, and we can do it those for now. All right, so I want to see if I can copy some codes from our last session so that some aspect of this will be very fast. So what I'll do is I'll just open authentication demo, right? And then I'll need some of these stuff. So we'll put it in a new window. And this one. Okay, so I think we're good. All right. So we're going to do our setup. We need SRC folder. We need server.js. Yeah, and the other guys. All right, so I can just say mkdir src slash middlewares controllers routes. What am I missing? Models. Okay. Model controller routes. All right, so I have those guys created, and inside of it, we can do app.js. Okay. So we want to bootstrap our server const HTTP equals require HTTP. Then I don't want to do it again. I want to get cause. No, we should do it in app. So I'm going to say server is equal to HTTP dot create server. I'm going to leave this blank for now. I'm going to say server dot listen listen to request on 8,000 and console log server listen import. So I think that's good. Then we get to, so let me install node one. Okay. While I get on with the other stuff. So I'm going to come here and say express equals to require express app is expressed on right export module.export app. Okay, so we can come here now and import app. All right, we know we're going to src slash app and we're using app to create our server. Okay, so that looks good. Yeah, hope I'm not missing anything. So we're gonna do app dot post. So let's handle /login. All right, and this is how it is. So we'll just say rest dot oh. Right, so rest dot status 200 and dot JSON message be welcome. Okay, so this is for this route. All right, let's test it out. So I'm gonna say post to, we're not running our server yet. So let's configure our server to run, right? So how do we want that to work? We want to create scripts. So I want to watch script that would use nodemon server.js, and I want a start script, and that would do node server.js, right? Or so having done that, you can now say npm run watch. And there you go, our server is running. So let's test this endpoint. If it works, it works. It says welcome. Okay, so I've set up our server successfully. So now let's do our models. So we need our models now. So let's come back here. And this is where I'm going to quickly copy because of time so that we don't waste time, I'm going to come back here, and that's named user.model.js. Okay. So user.model.js. I don't know if the last video has been uploaded on YouTube, but in case there's anybody in class who is thinking, what's going on here? Why are we copying code that we don't know? These codes were written during the last class. So I'm just going to glance through it to let you understand what's happening here. So what's happening is that we are using a package called bcrypt, right, to encrypt our passwords. So whatever password the user tries to save in our database, right? We have defined a schema for our database. Let me start here. And our database is going to accept username, email, and password during registration. Okay, and the type of this data that we expect are strings. So they will all be strings, they're all required. And we expect that emails should be unique in our database. So if you have an email already and try to save another email that is, identical with the one we already have in database, we should catch that and throw an error. All right, so that's what's happening there. And then once we are saying that pre-save, that means before saving into this schema, run this code, the code that you find in this function. All right, so what's in the code? So we're going to check if the password field is modified, and if it's modified, we skip and just call next. All right, that means if it already exists, all right, for that particular session that's trying to run, that particular user trying to save, then we just pass. We don't need to run bcrypt again. All right, we don't need to hash every time. Okay, and then we go next. What do we do here? We sort, right? We generate a sort. Like I said during the last class, a sort is like, how easy would it be to to crack this password we're trying to generate. All right. Think about it in the context of cooking. When you put too much salt, it's harder to swallow. All right. So the higher the salt you generate, the more harder it is to crack the password. So we generate the salt first, and then we hash the password using that salt. All right. So this is the password using the salt, and then we save it to the database. All right. So that is it. And then we export a model. So this model is what we would use to communicate with our server. All right, so that's what's happening there. So let's create our .env file, environment variable. I knew that I was missing one package, npmi.env. Okay. All right, so having installed that, we need Mongo URI, and that will be equal to something that will generate. All right. And then we don't need that JWT secret because we're not using JWT in today's class. If we have time, I might teach you something called refresh token. So how to work with refresh tokens. Then we might need JWT, but for now, let's learn about cookie. Cookie is enough bone to swallow. So let me not complicate things unless I finish before time. Okay, so let's see. Mongo URI, we need to generate that. So I'm going to launch my local MongoDB, and then, connect to this. Okay, so what I'm going to do is copy this, right? In fact, I'm going to create a new password. Let's call it cookie based auth, a new database. Sorry. So I'll copy the entire string and connect to that database. So I come here, I'm going to paste this here, and this is the database that we would connect to. Okay, so there's that guy. So I forgot this guy to DB, connect.js that helps us connect. So let's copy the content of this, and we're going to do connect db.js. There's something I want you to notice now. You should notice that a lot of these things are repetitive. All right. So we repeat a lot of these steps for every project. And the reality is that you will not do this every time. It's something you do during setup, and then you start writing logic. All right. So we're repeating a lot of this step, and you could easily stick Or you can create a cookbook that helps you set up your server. All right, like I've been trying to do, I'm posting on LinkedIn. So those type of cookbooks, they help you a lot. When you're starting a new project, you just open them, look at it, you remember the flow, and then you continue. Whereas it's not something that you would always remember all the time, because you could start a project today, right? Maybe I employed today to start a project, and you start a project, and the next time you bootstrap any project again could be like for the next 1 year. All right, it happens sometimes. And you might have forgotten the entire step. You just go and get the cookbook or the cheat sheet that you created, and you can get things started. Okay. So yeah. So we have this guy. This guy will help us connect to our MongoDB using the URI that we've set. But then we have to come to the server and make use of .env package. So we say require .env, then we say .config and call it. So that is what we need to do. That being done, I think we need to call connect while connecting to the while starting our server. So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to use that same pattern again. All right. So connect DB, we need to get it from our DB connection. And server running on ports. Well, let's put our ports here. That's not a bad idea. So say port equals 8,000. And then I'm going to restart because I expected those errors. npm start. And everything should be good, but since it's not good, let's see what the problem might be. Mongoose. All right. npm I mongoose, because we are making use of mongoose. All right. So npm start. All right, ports, listening on ports. So let's see. Okay, we ought to create a variable called ports. Const port equals process.env dot port. And most times you see people doing this, or 8,000. So in case the environment variable is not set, just set it. All right, that's what that does. So we're back up, but we need to use nodemon, not. So use npm run watch. All right. So we're back up nodemon, and we are connected to our database. So that's good. So I'm going to close every other person, close others. All right. Sorry, my internet went off. If you have the host privilege, please make me host. Okay. I think I am the host. All right. That's fine. Can you guys still see my screen? No.
Yeah, I can see your screen now.
All right, great. So we've done our setup. Let's go over what we've done. I think everything here is supposed to be clear, because that's basic enough. Everything here is supposed to be clear. We're handling just one route. And all right, so let's put in our middleware. So we know we want to make use of express dot is it JSON now? Express.json. I think that's it. All right, that's one. We need to make use of cause. Remember, we installed cause earlier. So let's just put cause there. So what cause does for us is that it's going to allow other domains communicate with our server. So without the cause setting, what will happen is that if you try to connect to our server from another domain, say a website is trying to consume our API, they are going to have a cause error. All right, so that's what we're trying to just configure. You should do this in your servers. So what to do is inside the app folder, we're going to do that first. So say app.use cause. I want to get cause from the package cause. Okay, so just put it there, cause. I think that is enough, but you can do more settings, right? But that's not what we plan to talk about today. So you have your cause there, and now we need to make use of cookies. So for cookies, we installed a package called cookie parser. All right, so we need that package. So I'm going to say const cookie parser equals require what now? Require cookie parser. Okay, and there you go. I'm going to at this point app.use cookie parser. You can call it like this too. So all these guys have configuration. You can read more about that. If you have more configurations, you can pass into them. All right. But then the default configuration is enough for the scope of this class today. All right. So now that we have these guys installed, we can now make use of cookies. Okay. So what's the cookie essentially? Let's go to my drawing board. Scally draw. If you are new entirely to programming and you're taking this class, this might be very abstract, all right, for you. But if you are not new to programming, say you've done PHP, all right, you've done PHP, or any type of, you've implemented any type of front end and you did login, all right, what you remember is that there has to be a session. The reason is because, say you log in to this website, all right, the user enters their username and their password, and then they click on login. And then they click on login, right? So let's do login. Okay. And then after clicking on login, what will happen is trying to help you visualize the process. Okay. So when they log in, what will happen is that usually they will now have a page, all right? They'll have access to this page. Just try to do something basic. So they have access to a page like this. All right. And then you'll see something here that looks like the profile icon. All right. Which shows that this user is logged in. All right. So that's what will happen. So when the user logs in, they have access to this. So if they refresh this page now, if they refresh this page, oh, nice spelling for refresh. If they refresh this page, what will happen is that they would not lose their session. All right. They don't lose their session. That means you still see that they are logged in. The reason why they don't lose that, I'm already using the word session now, okay? But the reason why they don't lose their authentication, let me use that word because session, I need session to mean something else. So they don't lose that authenticated status because they have a session going on. All right, so in PHP, you use your headers to set your session. And then when you refresh, the session is already there. So when the user logs out, you delete that session. So what happens is that when a user is browsing a site, there is a mechanism. When I say mechanism, not code, right? There's a mechanism that checks if the user is logged in. If there's a session, if there's a session, then allow the user visit that page. If there's no session, then take the user to login. All right. So when the user refreshes anytime or tries to access that page, you check if there's a session. Is there a session? If there is, allow them access it. If there is none, then take them to the login page. So that is what we're trying to do with Node.js now. All right. So when you hear session-based authentication, sometimes the terms are confusing because you hear cookie-based authentication and you hear session-based authentication. But then during the implementation of both, you'll be seeing cookie inside of it, and then your head is like blowing up. What's that? So think of a cookie as a file. So cookie-based authentication means that we are not actually creating sessions on the back end. What we do is when the user logs in, stay with me now. When the user logs in, what we do is that we communicate to the server. So we communicate to the server. Let's make this make sense now. So we communicate to the server, right? And we say, user is trying to log in. Baba, can you allow us? So let's go. So you're trying to log into the server. And then they're going to provide payload, right? The payload is their username and password. That's the technical term that we use. So payload, in this case, they're going to provide a payload. And then the server is going to check that payload, right? And the server is going to ask some questions within its own implementation. So let's see, the server would say, check this payload, right? Check this payload. Is there username inside of it? And is there password inside of it? So you see something like this. Username, password. I'll delete this one now first so that I can make my case. So username, password. And if the answer is yes, the server will not proceed to continue verification. All right. Then you'll now see something like username and password valid. All right. Or username valid. So username exists, right? Password valid. So that's the second check. And if that is correct also, the server now says, okay, so I need to establish a method to confirm that the next time you want to access a resource within, all right, my computer, I need to confirm that you are already authenticated so that you don't have to log in every time you need to access my server. Because, of course, I'm not going to let you in if I don't know who you are. So what is going to happen is that I'm going to generate a ticket for you. All right. And that ticket is a cookie. Okay. So this is a ticket, it's a cookie. This cookie can have whatever information I want it to have. But in the case of what we are going to implement now, it's just going to be a string that the server, generated for you. All right. So I'm going to send this string. I'm going to send it to the user. Okay. So what will happen is that every time the user tries to access my computer, the server, it's going to provide this string, this cookie. All right. So I will check the cookie that the user provides, check for the string. Okay. And then if I can confirm that I generated this string, if I can confirm that I generated this string, right, I'll grant you access. Okay. So it's like when you go to a party, for instance, right? When you go to that party, you have a ticket or maybe an IV, or let's not use party. Let's use what can we use? Let's use a hotel. When you go to a hotel now, they give you like, they generate like a what is it called now? Let's say a card for you, and within that card, there is data in that card. So if you swipe that card, at your door, if you still have valid, like your time in the hotel still is still valid, it will allow you to enter the room. All right. But then if it is not, you won't be able to enter the room. That's how cookies work. So cookie is that card that the server, who is the receptionist in this case now, will give to the client who is trying to access the hotel services, right? And then if the user is trying to now access somewhere, he has to present that card. When you present the card, which is the cookie, right, the hotel system will check if that cookie is still valid. And if it is valid, it grants you access. If it's not valid, it tells you that, man, you don't have the permission to visit this thing. Okay. So I want you, anytime you see cookie online or session online, just remember that session is like we're trying to establish a time frame for which a user's access into our system is valid. That's the meaning of session. All right. But how do we do that? We have to generate a cookie. The cookie will contain data about the session. All right. If I'm going to bring it home for Nigerians, I know a lot of us go to church, so it will make sense. If you don't even go to church, you know about how church works. So let's say your church has 3 services, and your church is making use of a hotel, right? The hotel knows that, oh, the church is meeting from 9 to 10, and then it's meeting from 12 to 1, and from 3 to 4. What happens is that they are going to generate, that's their session. The session of the church is 9 to 10, 12 to 1, and 3 to 4. So the hotel is going to generate something for them, all right, that determines that, oh, you have access to this place from this time to this time, from this time to this time, from this time to this time. Whatever the hotel tenders to the church that grants them access, let's think of it as a card. That is the cookie. So the cookie is how we validate a session. That should just do the job. The cookie is how you validate a session. All right. So let's try to implement it and see how it works. All right, in code. But before we even go on, let me take questions, because this topic usually confuses developers. So let me take some questions before we continue. Anybody has a question based on what I've explained? All right, let me rephrase my question. Is it clear? Can I continue?
Yes, it is. Hello.
All right, great. Thank you. All right, so we're going to do some comments here. So I'm going to say one. When a user tries to log in, all right, when a user tries to log in, one, we want to check if the username and password exists. Okay, that's one of the first step. Two, we want to, if that condition is true, if exists, all right, we want to continue to the next step. Or else we want to return error. All right. So that's the second thing. So the third step that would only continue if the previous one was confirmed. We want to generate a session token. All right. And an expiry date. Okay. And after we do that, we want to store session. All right. So we can store it into a database, or we can make it store in the state, in the application state. This is not advised. This is what we should do. all right, if we actually want to store it. Okay, but then in this case, I think I won't even store. All right, I won't even. Okay, I will store it in the state. All right, but then we'll consider something else. I hope we have enough time and I remember. So let's go. Store session in DB. And what will be the next thing? So we will not send the cookie because I have to send the cookie to the person trying to access our site. So I'm going to do let's say send cookie to request, say requester, or let's say client. All right, send cookie to client. Okay, so let's implement up to here, and then we'll continue from there. Okay, so let's see. We'll check if the username and password exists. And how might we do that? So we already did that in this implementation. So let's go and grab the code. So auth routes, HTTP login controller. All right, so I'm going to copy this. And what you called auth.controller.js. So let's do auth.controller.js. Paste, and let's see if everything is working well. We don't have JSON web token, so this is going to cause a problem. So I'm going to get rid of JSON web token for now. All right, then HTTP login. So we take the email and the password. All right, so not username and password now. Let's do email and password. Okay, so we'll check if the email and password is correct. So we'll find the user with that email. All right, if that user does not exist, then we return that email invalid. And then after we check, and if the user is confirmed to be correct, we do now check the password. So we compare Bcrypt, all right, using the password we already have and the password that was given to us. So if there is a match, we proceed. If there is no match, we return this error. That's fine. So at this point, this is where things will now change. So instead of creating JWT, all right, instead of creating JWT, we want to create our session token. All right, we want to create our session token. So what we'll do here is we're going to use a package called UUID to generate that token. So this is a very basic implementation of this concept, just to make it stick before we can now start doing some other things, because this is not really easy to pass across. So we're going to do npm I UUID. All right. So I'm going to install UUID, and our server is still running. So at this point, we're going to say const session token equals to UUID dot version 4. And what this will do is that we generate a random ID for us. Okay, so this is not far-fetched. npm UUID. So somebody help me check when the next class is supposed to start so that I have a good sense of my time. So you see that almost over 99 million persons are making use of this, downloading this weekly. So you should have a sense of how useful it is. Okay, so we can either do this or we call version 4 and it will still work. All right, so let's just follow the docs. So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to get UUID. So I'm going to call UUID version 4, and that should do the trick for us. All right, so let's see. Okay, these are for complex scenarios, but I guarantee that this should be enough for us. So let's continue. All right, so I'm going to do expire that. So I'm trying to state when this session should expire, how long this session should last. All right. Normally, this should not be too long, right? This thing should not last for too long, but you can make it as long as you want. All right, let's make it last for 1 day in our own case. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say 24 times 60 times 60 times 1000. So this is 24 hours. That's what I've just done there. This is for 1 millisecond. This is for 1 minute. This is for 1 hour. And this is for 1 day. All right. So it's going to accumulate to a day. All right. So having done this, I've created these two things. So what do we want to do now? I want to save this session somewhere, like we specified here. All right. I want to save this session somewhere. Let me take this stuff and put it here. And put it here. Okay. So I've done 1, I've done 2, and we're doing 3 now. Okay. So I'm going to replace this with this. All right. So I've done this. So the next thing I want to do is to store this session into a DB or state. So I'm going to use state for the purpose of this explanation so that things are more clear. So I'm going to say sessions, and I want it to be an object. All right. So here, let's see, store session. Okay. So I'm going to copy this, put it here. I want to store session in state or DB. So we're using state in this case. So I'm going to say sessions. All right. And then I want the key to be the token. The token will be used as the key for my object. I'll say equals expires at. All right. So expires at would be this value. All right. And then I want to add something that I can use to verify the user in this session. Okay. And that thing could be the user ID. So let's check this user. All right. And we'll use the user's ID. So I want to say user ID is equal to user.id. All right. I hope that works. Okay. So the next thing I want to do is I'm not signing JWT anymore. All right. I'm not responding with this. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I've generated this and this. So I want to send token to client. So I want to send this token to the client. So we're going to say response.cookie. All right. I'm going to call it let's call it say let's just call it auth. All right. Let's call it auth COK. Okay. And then what I'm going to pass in as the value of the cookie would be the session token. Right. So I'm going to pass this here. And I'm going to configure it and say max age should be expires at. All right. So that is that. So let's do something. Rest dot status would say 200 and then dot JSON. Let's just say message welcome. All right. Okay, so I have HTTP login now. I can get rid of this. And now I'll come here and say for these routes, I want to handle it with HTTP login. Why am I unable to? I'm unable to, automatically get access to it from here. Okay. So we're going to const HTTP login equals require. I'm looking for SRC. So sorry, controllers, right? /auth dot controller. So I knew that there was a problem. So let's check what the problem is. Cannot use import statement. I'm sorry. Where might that be? So let's see. UUID. Oh, so yeah, const equals require, right? So I'm going to go back to my what I know. UUID.v4. That should do the trick for us. So yes, everything is running now. So let's test this and see. But before we test, I would like to even do something so that we are flowing. Okay. So I'm going to commit up to here, and let's check this thing together. So I'm going to save here. Let's see console.log user. All right. Yes. So let's try to log in using Postman. Let's just save this guy as something. Post / login. Right. And we are supposed to pass in email and password. So do email. Let's see, admin at gmail.com and password. One, two, three, four, five. Okay. And I know that if we, so let me save this guy somewhere. Let's call it test login or cookie login. Right? We're going to save it. So I need to select a collection. Let's create a collection for it to see cookie. So save it inside there. Right? And if we try to log in, we can expect an error. Invalid email or password. The reason is because the user is not existent at this point. They've not registered. All right, so let's register. So local host /register. Okay. I want to save this guy as cookie register. Select here and save. So to register, you need body. So it's going to be post request and then need the body raw JSON. So we're going to have email, password, and what else do they have? Let's check. What else? Username, email, and password. Okay, so username. So I'm going to copy this. username. Sorry. So let's just say Jack Joe. So I'm going to save that. And of course, we should expect an error if we try to hit this endpoint. So there's an error not found. Now we don't want this type of error to be returned to our user. This is an automatic handler doing this. All right. So I want to do something. I'm going to use the opportunity to just show you. So if we get to app.js, we can say app.use any routes that we don't have. All right. I want to handle here regress. I want to say rest dot status 404 and the JSON. We'll say message routes not found. Okay, so yeah. So if we try that thing again and hit the endpoint, we should get a route not found. Okay, so that's how to handle routes that don't exist in your application and the user is trying to access it. Remember, this thing flows from top to bottom, right? So if no route was able to handle that request, then it means we don't have that route. So I will catch it here. Okay. So that being said, let's go back to creating our register controller. So I'm going to use this users endpoint, copy this, just user.controller.js. So let's do that. User.controller.js. And you have this guy here. Let's see what's happening. Everything seems well. So let's register, and if there's an error, we'll fix it. Routes not found. Okay, we'll not handle the route. So I'm going to go back to routes. No, not routes. Let's use app, please. Because we don't have time for too much. So app.post slash register, right? And then we'll say HTTP register user. Okay. So now we should be handling that. So if I send, look at that, user created. So we check our database. We should have cookie-based auth, and we should have that user. All right. Should have that user. Okay. So what's the next? So now that we're registered, let's try to log in now. So if we send, you see that. So we have the user logged in, logged to our console. So let's go back to our auth controller and see. So we're at this point. All right. So because we have a user, we proceeded to this. Okay. So the next thing we do is check if password matches. All right. And then if the password match, right, we're going to, if the password does not match, we're going to return this, an error. But then if the password matches, we're going to create this. We're going to do this. All right. So what I want to do now is console.log this session. So I'm going to say sessions. All right. So let's get rid of, okay, I already got rid of it. All right. So let's try to log in again. Cookie login. So now that I log in, see the session that we have. All right. So this is the string that was generated automatically using UUID. This is the expires at, which is 7 days. And this is the user ID that we got from the database. Okay. So that is it. That is it. Am I getting that, guys? Okay. So let's go. So what's the next thing we have here? we respond with our cookie. So this is the moment of truth. Let me get rid of the sessions. In fact, I'll leave it. Let the log. Okay. So let's go run this again. I want you to notice something. So I'm going to come to cookie. I'm going to clear this cookie. Where do I clear you from? So I'm going to clear this cookie. And I'm going to come to cookies. Now I can leave that one. So notice that. Let's go to cookies now. Notice that I have 3 cookies here. If I click on it, there is JWT, there's session token, and then there is refresh token. So these are the cookies that we have here. So take note of that. And here in the response, we have nothing. If I click on login, what do you see here? You have AUT, that's auth cock. All right, and then this is it. So what's the value we have here? 3DC2. If you check our sessions, we have 3DC2 to 8C. All right, so that value in our session, we have sent it to the client. Remember, in our case, Postman is the client. All right, so I've sent it to the client, and the client knows about it. If we check these cookies up here, you will see that it now has 4 cookies, and then it has this guy. If I click on it, you see the value here, and you see expires. What do you see there? Friday 31. So 1 day, that's the next day after today. No, 7 days, sorry. Right? Was it 7 days? 1 day. All right, 1 day, that's tomorrow. And then the same time we set it. So you can see that that worked. All right, so we have all the details here. So that's how you implement cookie-based authentication. That's not all. We have only sent it to the user. So now let's try to validate when the user tries to access a resource in our server. We want to now validate now if they have a token. All right. So that's another long process. Well, let me see. What time is this class supposed to end? Sorry that I cannot remember. I think it should be 1. So we should have time. So I'm going to try to clear up this terminal. Let's go here. All right. So now I've set the cookie, and I think we're done here. And with this file, we're done. So what I want to do now is, just like we had the middleware that verified every request coming in, verified the JWT. This time, we are not verifying JWT. We're trying to verify that the user has a session, an active session, all right, before they can even access our resource. So how can we do that? So I'm going to go to app.js, and we're going to say, let's just call it protected. So the user is trying to access this route that is called protected. All right, let's handle everything here. Should we do it here? Okay, I think we need to do some adjustments. Let's do some adjustments to our work. So this, where are we saving? So we're saving it in this controller. We're saving the sessions in this controller. And that is not cool. That is not cool because we need to have access to the session. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to leave it here, but then I'm going to create my new controller here also. Okay. So that don't bug us with details. So I'm going to say HTTP protected to handle protected route. All right, so this will be our handler. So let me just export it, come back to app.js and import it. Okay, so now I have it imported here. All right, so if a user tries to access this route protected, this will be our handler for it. So let's write this. Let's fledge it out. All right. So what I want to do is that when a user tries to access this route, all right, let's just say open invoke, all right, or when invoked, all right. So when invoked, what I want to do is that we want to check if they have a cookie in the request. So we say, let me show you something. So I'm going to console log rec.cookie. Is it cookie or cookies? Let's try. So I'm going to rec the cookies. So the implication of setting this auth cookie, right, in our client is that every time the user sends a request now, this cookie will go along with the request. The user does not have to add this cookie by himself. The server adds the cookie in the client, and then any request that the client is sending to the server is going to have that cookie attached to the request. All right, so we can try that by sending a request to protected. If I send this request to protected, you see that it logged this session out. Is that what I did here? Let's check. Let's come here and check. So add the regular cookies. Yes. So you see our cookie here being logged. All right. So these are all the cookies. So this is, if you check, if we come back here now, you check all the cookies. We have our refresh token, session token, JWT and auth. This refresh token is not coming back because it wasn't set by this particular server. All right. So that's why it's not coming back. For everyone that is set by this server, you see it here. All right. So there's auth. This guy, this is what we're interested in. So let's copy it. Come back to here and say rec.cookies. cookies. This is what we need. All right. So let's call again. And then we get the cookie. But we're going to come back here and say const session token. So we'll call it session token. All right. It's going to be request cookies and then the cookie name. So that is it. So we're going to say if it doesn't exist. All right. If it doesn't exist, we want to respond to the user with the status of 401. Is it 41 or 43? 41. So let's say JSON message unauthorized. If it doesn't exist, we say unauthorized. But if it exists, we are still not satisfied. We still need to do more check. All right. So what's the next check we want to do? We want to check if they have an active session. That means if there's a session for this cookie that is stored within this object. So what we're going to do is we'll say if, so let's first say const. No, I think we can check directly. But let's see, current session is equal to sessions, right? Then we want to use this session token to get the key. If you remember, let's scroll up, right? Sessions is an object, right? And it has keys. So the keys are going to be the request token. So let's check. The keys are going to be this refresh token. So when we say sessions and we're passing the key, we're trying to get this object for the session. All right. So what I'm going to do now is if something is returned, of course, we want to proceed. But if not current session, we want to also say right undefined. So this thing looks like too much, or like we're duplicating code, but I think it works for what we need. I wanted to reduce the amount of code that we've written here, but I'm just going to leave it like that for clarity. So the next thing we want to do, after we've been able to ascertain that there is an active session in the server state for that user, right? We want to do the next thing. So what's the last thing we want to do? Okay, they might have an active session, but it might have expired. So this expires at stuff. We want to use it now because it might have expired. So what we're going to do now is to say, that. So let's do, what do I do now? So if current session, right, that expires at, so this current session that was returned here will be this object that you can see. So dot expires at will give us this guy. All right. So if that value is less than new date, so this date will be today's date. So if it's less than today's date, it means it has expired. All right. So we're going to return and see token expired. Token expired. Again, very basic. There might be logics that you want to perform, right, with all these conditions. There might be other logics. You can perform them, right? Perform your logic before you actually, return to the user. So, yeah. All right. So that is that. So I've checked if it is still valid. Okay. And if all that condition is fulfilled, then we want to give them the resource that it came for. I'm going to say rest.json, rest.json, there's a status 200.json message. We're going to say access granted, right? Okay, so now let's try again. So now if I click on protected, what do we get as a response? Click on body and check. 401 unauthorized. Why is it unauthorized? It's unauthorized because we have actually, so there's an error here. Let's see. What's that error? So there's an error we have here. Current session that expires at undefined reading. Oh, I see. So that makes sense because, let me explain why. Because every time we restart our server, since this is a variable, remember when we started, when we used application state as our database, you remember that every time we refresh the application, we are going to lose that state. All right. In the real life scenario, your server is not going to be refreshed like that. It happens in development, right? We refresh our servers. So that's why you will lose it. But in real life scenario, you won't lose it. But regardless, this is not the absolute way to, is that the word? This is not the best way to implement this. This is for example purpose. What we'll do in an actual application is that instead of saving to sessions like this in this state, we are going to save it to a database. We can save it to MongoDB, we can save it to Redis, we can save it to anything we want to do. So at this point here, where we have this logic, where's that guy? Okay, it's not in this controller. It's in the login controller now. So at this point where we have this logic here, what would have been doing is that I would have been saving to a database. And you know how to save to a database. So we save the session to a database so that we don't lose it. But for the purpose of, easy explanation, I decided to strip all of those things out. So it is understandable that the first time there will be no session, right? So how do I avoid this error from happening? So let's see. Sessions, let's see where the error came from first. So the error said create session that expires at, so let's see this guy, right? So I'm going to use coalition. Is that the right word? Okay. Optional chaining. Yes, that's the right term for it. I'm going to use optional chaining there. So let's try again to see if there is any error. And errors are our friends. They help us write better applications. So there's another error. So let's go. What is that? Cannot set headers after they are sent to the client. Where? Internal server error. So let's check our implementation under protected. Okay. So I'm going to go to protected. So I'm going to use return for all these guys. All right. So return. 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 All right. And let's try again. So protected. Let's go. 8. There you go. 4.1 unauthorized, but there are no errors, right? And we know that should happen. So now let's log in. I'm going to turn this to login. I'm going to click send. It says welcome. That means I'm logged in now. All right, I have a session. So now if I try to protected, access protected, let's see what happens. Token expired. Okay, that was pretty fast. Token expired. So let's see. I said, did I say 1 hour? So let's go again. Let's look at our logic. Right. Okay, so let's try something here. So I'm gonna say console log expires. Let's check this guy expires at. And then check new dates. I'm gonna check these two things. And let's see what to get. Unauthorized. I have to log in again. Okay, so I've logged in to get that session and then try protected. And we see that we have this and this. Okay, I see. So let's see. Well, I can do this easier. So I'm going to do something to avoid too many stories with this calculation. I'm going to use some provided functions within the language. So I'm saying new dates. So set full year. I'm saying new dates. Get full year. No, call it get full year. All right. Can even use day. Set day. Set day. Set day. Let's do this. Get full. Yeah. Okay. So this is 1 year. This is going to last for 1 year. Plus 1. So 1 year. Save. And if we try again, try to log in. Welcome. And try to access protected. We should have our response access granted. Okay. I know this. I know that this could look like magic, but you just have to log everything I'm doing, right? You can log what this guy returns and then log what this complete string returns. You see what happened there. All right, console log is your friend. and go through the logic, try to reason about it, everything will make sense. But I want to commit to something, but I'm afraid because of my schedule. I want to commit to doing another video, right, to explain this more thoroughly. All right, because when we're in class like this, I'm looking at time, trying to hurry, and I might miss a lot of points. So I'm going to try to do a video and send. This is not a promise, it's something I want to do. Okay, I'll do another video explaining this concept well, but then you should also go through what we have done and try to understand it, try to digest it. Okay, so I'll go back to our board, right, and just do a summary of what we have done. So what I've done is this. I've created a session. So you see these sessions, this guy you see here as a variable. So let me fold everybody. Fold. All right, so you see this session here, you see as a variable, right? This is like the register. All right, the server, which I'm going to say is the receptionist at this point, all right, has a register. So every session that we create, everybody will want to grant access to our platform. We have to add them to this register. That's why we add the cookie to the register. All right. And next time when they want to access our platform, we have to go back to our register and check, do we have this guy in our books? All right. If we have the person in our books, we will now check what did they subscribe for? How long did they subscribe to use our facility? And we check if it's so and so date. We want to check if it has expired. Has it expired? No. Grant them access. That's when you see access granted. Is it still valid? Yes. No. Then deny access. All right. So a lot of checks we did. First of all, we checked if the cookie was being sent to us. All right. And if not, we just stop at that point and say unauthorized. If the cookie was being sent to us, right, we want to check if that cookie exists in our register. Is it something we give to you, or something you are just generating somewhere else and sending to us, right? And if the answer is yes, then we proceed. Okay, we know we gave you this thing, but is it still valid? That's the expiry date. And we check that. If it is still valid, we grant you access. If not, we reject, right, and tell you that your session has expired. So that is what we have done. The other bits are just codes that we copied from, the other project we did the last time. Okay, but basically what I've done is what I've summarized to you. Okay, so if you have questions, I'm going to take them now before we call it a day.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Thank you for the session. So my question is, when you were troubleshooting and you use return in those if statements, so I want to understand why you changed that.
Okay. That's a very, very good question. And thank you for bringing it up. So what we did is this, right? Now, this is a function, right? Okay, and this function would go from top to bottom. So when you say rest the status, you are not actually ending the process. If you do rest the send, right, that would also end the process. So rest the send is different, or rest dot end will end the process at this point. But that's not what we're doing. We're doing rest the status, all right, passing the status, and then rest.json. So what's happening is that we are setting the header, the request header, all right. But then if, just imagine that this condition was true, right? That means if there is no session, it will return true. That means this code will run, all right? We have set the header. And now come here again, and this condition is still true. We are now trying to set the header again, and you cannot set the header twice. That was the error that we received. We're trying to set header when header was already set. That was the error message, right? So how do we avoid that? What we do is we return, and we know that when you return from inside the function will stop executing. Okay.
Okay.
So at this point, we end execution and we send this to the user. So that's what we did.
All right. Thank you.
All right. You're welcome. So any other question? Any other questions? So before I even forget, hey, there's something that came to mind just now. I am going to try, if I happen to record that video, what I'll do is I'm going to show you how the front end guys will interact with this thing. So when we say send to the front end, we've been using Postman, right? But it's important that as a backend developer, you know how your front end developer is going to, interact with it. And there's something I wanted to show you. There's an option that we can set on our cookie, HTTP only, right? And that's a security measure that we can put in. So I wanted to show you the impact of that, but then I would need the front end to do that. So if I have the chance, I record a video and I will show you how we interact with the with our endpoints from the front end and how the cookies are being saved in the front end. So I will do all those in my explainer video. All right, guys. Thank you for your time. So about what I promised during the last class that I was going to post on my LinkedIn, right? I said I was going to post the cookbook on my LinkedIn. I've done that. You can check it out. All the codes that we wrote during the last class, they are in that post, right? I compiled them together step by step, and that should be a very good guide for you guys. So you can visit my LinkedIn and take advantage of it.
Thank you.
So if there are no more questions, I think at this point, we can end the session. All right, guys, thank you so much for your time. Have a lovely day ahead. I never knew I stopped sharing since.
Thank you.
Oh, somebody asked Ikenna, how does one get better at logic? It's practice, oh, it's practice. And learn how to use pseudo codes. Write your logic out, what you intend to achieve. Write it out as comments, just like we did, and then start achieving them one after the other. It will help you a lot. All right, guys.